What do you do when life is kicking you in the ass and it's hard and you're struggling to pay these bills and you're going from relationship to relationship because it's not working out and you don't have friends and everything is a struggle? What do you do for you to take care of? What is your thing?
Men also have struggles too. And when we don't acknowledge those struggles, we don't support those struggles, we're actually making the world worse for everybody.
When I take care of me, I'm so much better for everybody else. When I'm comfortable with me, I want to see that in the people I take care of. And I can do it.
I don't know if my dad's ever said to me, "How are you feeling?"
My dad didn't do what he was supposed to, even if he didn't know how. You know, he was the adult in the situation and I was the kid, and I certainly could have used somebody. But now I can be that person for a lot of men who don't have it. And that's what I aim to be. I'm just listening. Sometimes you just gotta let a man talk.
Welcome to the Authentic Man podcast. I am your host, David Chambers. This is a podcast for men who want more and less from life. More deep connection, more emotional intelligence, more self-awareness, and more great sex. And less heartache, less conflict, less overthinking, and less stress. Creating dating lives, sex lives, and relationships that are incredible and authentic. My deepest goal is that you, the listener, can take away what you hear in this podcast and apply it to your life so that you can experience greater happiness, transformational growth, deeper relationships, and profound sexual intimacy. I believe that as men, we are capable of so much more depth than we are shown or led to believe. So join me as we get deep into this. Welcome back to another episode of the Authentic Man podcast. I'm your host, David Chambers. I hope the new year's going well for you. And this episode, we've got a wonderful episode here, and we're talking about something that, I don't get into that often. It's around black masculinity and black sexuality, black men's sexuality especially, who really get into it. I talked to the wonderful Harvey Laguerre. He's a coach. He is a father of 4 children. He's a stay-at-home dad. He's a man who talks to men about their lives and coaches them in what they're going through, in particular black men. And I thought he'd be a wonderful guest to talk about the experience of the black man, but also the experience of how black men are sexualized, highly sexualized in society, and how that impacts us, how that impacts the way that we move through the world. We also get into talking about how loneliness affects black men in an ever so slightly different way, and how mental health and dating standards for black men also are shifting and slightly different as well. And we also touched upon something which is probably might be quite hard for some people to hear, is actually around the criminalization of black men and how black men are assumed to be criminal in the world, and how that affects black men and their own authenticity and their own ability to express themselves as well. But if you're listening to this episode and you're interested in the world of dating, I've got a program that I'm running, and it's going to be starting towards the end of this month. Starts on the 22nd of January. It is what I've called the Men's Dating Accelerator. It's really to help men accelerate their dating at the beginning of this year, because I know a lot of men are really struggling, something I talk about in the podcast episode, about their ability to connect, their ability to feel worthy, their ability to take action in their dating lives in the way they want to. So I've created a program to really bring a group of men together to really help them do those things and really turn their dating life into something they enjoy, and they're having good results, the results that they desire. So if you're interested in that, that's the link is in the show notes for that. There's a live program. It's 5 weeks. It's 5 live sessions of me and a special guest I'll be having to talk about online dating. So if that's something you are interested in, just hop over to the show notes and click away there. But without further ado, I'll let you get into the episode.
Welcome, listeners. And I'm really looking forward to today's conversation with today's guest, because there is a lot of stereotypes and things that are said in the world about black men in particular. And obviously me being a black man, this has been something I've come up against in the world. And I particularly look back to my younger years of dating and being in relationships, or even looking at my father. is that the way in which we experience being Black men has a slightly different tinge to the other types of races of men, because there's some stereotypes that come with that. There's the racism we have to fear, and the way that masculinity is often transmitted or is perceived to be transmitted through Black men has this ever so slightly different tinge to it. So I wanted to speak to today's guest, a man who works with a lot of Black men and has a wonderful podcast where he talks to men about what's going on for them. I'd like to introduce to you Harvey Laguerre. How are you doing today, Harvey?
I'm great, David. Thank you for having me. I'm excited about this conversation. This is what I live for. Good to get a brother on here so we can dive in, get into some stuff. So I'm great to talk about. Let's talk about this.
Awesome. A question I love to ask many of my guests is just what was it? What was your journey to do the work that you do today?
Let's see. It's a little bit of a story, but I'll get into it. So in terms of what I do now, which is a combination of coaching and this podcast, Men Are The P.R.I.Z.E, that I created, it kind of started with COVID. I'm married. I actually have another podcast that I do with my wife called Love Is Black. So during COVID, when we were stuck in the house and we couldn't go anywhere, and we'd always said, you know what, we should do a podcast because we have divergent opinions on different things, politics and what kinds of stuff. So I'm like, we should have a mic in the room and hear people have, and then our conversations probably would be interesting to people. So with COVID and can't go anywhere, so we started a podcast, Love Is Black, and we talked about our relationship, how we met, our struggles, our ups and downs, and I enjoy it. I liked it. So we're in season 5 now, but probably around season 3, I was like, you know what? I want to do my own. I want to do a podcast for me. So I broke off and I came up with my own podcast called Men Are The P.R.I.Z.E. I'd always seen women are the prize. And in terms of the dating and the courting scene, women are the prize. And we men are out here just doing whatever we can to get these women to like us, to give us a chance, for us to spend this money and take them to the right restaurant and find interesting ways to propose and all this stuff. And I'm like, yeah, okay. But I think men are pretty cool too. I think we're the prize also.
Yeah.
So that's pretty much the name of the podcast. So Men Are The P.R.I.Z.E. So I'm like, okay, I've got the title. What am I doing? I need a space for men to talk. In particular, for Black men to talk. Men in general have a hard time communicating, expressing themselves. But when you add on being Black in a culture where religion is so, and to me, it feels like religion is so pressing on us about our sexuality, about how we're supposed to be as husbands, about as fathers, as men just walking the streets. All that kind of covers up the fact that we don't talk about what that is. We're just supposed to do it. We just absorb the way we're supposed to be. And I'm like, one, I'm an atheist. So that religion kind of throws that to the side. 2, I've not really been a fan of how men are perceived, how we're seen. And then on top of that, how Black men are perceived. So I'm like, I need some men to talk about this. We need to talk about this because I'm pretty sure I'm not the only person who feels this way. So let's create this space. Prize is the word that I use for the podcast. And it fits me because I started this podcast like 30 years after I should have. I don't know if podcasts were big 30 years ago, but when 18 and I left home and I went to college, I'm ready to go. I'm going to do things. I wanted to be an attorney. And I went there and I failed miserably, terribly. I'm a smart person, but I went to college and had a lot more fun than I needed to. And I'll leave it at that. So I failed, went back another semester, failed, came back, and I came back to a home. I'm Haitian, by the way. Caribbean family. I was expected. There was like, okay, my father's an accountant. You're going to follow in his footsteps. You're going to do big things. And I was the complete opposite. I came to a home as a failure where no one could even look at me. Like I was this failure, absolute failure. And I had no self-esteem after I'd failed. And I walked into a house where there wasn't even a scrap of it left for me. So for a year, everything, not even an argument. It wasn't even like we were arguing. It's like we weren't even talking. I was just this failure living in this home. And day after day, month after month, I felt worse. I can't do anything. I don't even fit this family. Nobody cares how I failed or why or what I can do about it. And I'm like, I don't really need to be here. I honestly don't need to be here. I have a scar on my wrist because I tried to kill myself. I didn't succeed, clearly. But at that point, I was at the lowest point I could be. That's essentially where my journey began because I didn't do it. And slowly with time, I got better. And it took me a while. And I did it by myself. I didn't have anybody to talk to. So I didn't end my life. And it took me years to create one, to create a person that I felt comfortable with. And eventually I met my wife. I have kids. I'm a stay-at-home dad of 4. So it took me a while to get to this place. My journey began when I tried to kill myself and I didn't do it. And I realized years later that there are a lot of men out there who probably have a similar struggle that I had, and nobody to talk to. Nobody to talk to. I went out for baseball or football and I didn't make it. And I didn't have somebody to talk to say, I feel bad about it and get it. Or I tried to talk to this girl and she wasn't interested, or she embarrassed me, or she broke my heart. And I had anybody to talk to about that. So all these disappointments, all these life lessons that if I had a mentor or a parent to say, you know what, it happens to all of us. But I don't know that stuff. I'm just sitting here struggling. And I wanted to create a space for men to kind of get that out and to talk about the struggles we have now. My journey is one of recognizing that you can get really low, and I was there, but you don't have to let it break you. And that's what it is. I tried, I didn't, and now I'm here to make sure as many men, as many Black men possible, don't even get to that point. And as long as we talk about it, we're going to be fine.
Powerful story, man. Wow, there's so many bits there. My mind is like wanting to jump into, but I think I'm going to start with what you were saying about fathers, because it was interesting there. You said that you went to college, you came back, and you said that you felt like you had failed, and it doesn't sound like anyone sat you down and said, "Hey, like, what happened? How are you? Like, you can do something else. You could do something different." It sounds like that wasn't a conversation that happened. And that's something that doesn't come from your father. And I wonder, in your own experience and from experience of working with men and speaking to men, like, how do we, as Black men especially, are we learning this way of being in terms of not talking from our fathers and our own culture? Or is it something you see as like more of a societal influence as well?
There's a lot to unpack with that. And I mean, I'll start personally. So like I mentioned, I'm Haitian, and it's obviously a very patriarchal. Caribbean is not even, it's not just a Haitian thing, it's Caribbean. Where by nature, the father is out working, making the money, bringing it back. Mom is here taking care of the kids, being the nurturer, being the emotional one. So our fathers aren't typically supposed to be the ones who have these kind of conversations like you mentioned. They're there to be that force in the house, to discipline, to provide the house, to provide the space for the mom, to cook the food, to help the child with the homework, to do all these things. And they're not really built to be an emotional part of that child's upbringing. It's not really what they're there for. My father wasn't the best father so my parents got divorced when I was 10. I had to go to court and I had to testify as to what parent I'd lived with. So pretty much I had a pretty toxic from 10 on. It was pretty toxic. I never had that kind of relationship with my father. So he wouldn't have been the one to kind of sit me down and say, hey, what happened? All I got from him was disappointment. All I got from him was desperation. That's my son. What happened? How could that happen? He wasn't there to help me figure out what happened. He was there dealing with the fact that his son was a failure. So it's a different story. That's what he went through. If it's Haitian fathers, they're not raised to be emotional. So one, that's not something he was going to do. But at times I've had to wrestle with the fact that maybe he didn't know how to do it anyway. So I think in a lot of cases, we raise our men to provide, to take care, to give you all the things that you need. But they don't account for the emotional when they talk about provide. Provide is a superficial. The gaming system, the nice bedroom. I'm an 80s kid. I was born in 74. So for me, I had a stereo in my room, the TV, I had my space, I could do whatever, that kind of stuff to provide. But it's not me growing up in 1988 and my dad coming and saying, You don't seem really happy these days. What's going on? There was no depression
No.
talk. There's no talk about how I'm dealing with being a boy growing up in high school. It's hard enough growing up, being a teen, straight boy in high school, want to go date these girls and just be laughed at and whatever, all these things, all these struggles. So I think it's a combination of fathers don't know, fathers who are dealing with their own issues. So in their minds, I work, I bring home money, mom should be taking care of that. Or I shouldn't have to take care of that. I'm doing my part. And
Yep.
that's a big thing, fatherhood. And I didn't have the father that I needed because I would have been in a lot better spot. I think I would have been able to be vocal about my struggles, be vocal about the fact that I was an only child and watched my parents get divorced and lived in a house where it was a violent household. I heard things, I saw things. So that's a whole other thing that's added on to what I got to deal with growing up. And I became very insulated. So I'm very much I'm just in myself. There's not a lot of people to talk to. So I'm going through all this stuff all by myself. And a person to talk to would have been vital to my growth, to my emotional growth, to my masculine growth. So I definitely, my dad didn't do what he was supposed to, even if he didn't know how. He was the adult in the situation and I was the kid and I certainly could have used somebody. But now I can be that person for a lot of men who don't have it. And that's what I aim to be. I'm just listening. Sometimes you just got to let a man talk. And that's what I do.
And it's interesting because for me, like my parents are both from Jamaica, right? So I have the same, that kind of Caribbean way of being. And I know it's not just with black fathers, but it's more pronounced, I would say, in black fathers of like you said, the providing. I provide money, and the providing is actually really just like money, roof over the head, food on the table. If you're lucky as well, right? I know a lot of friends of mine whose fathers wouldn't even show up and do that much, right? But it is just this idea of like, provide money. The father's job is to provide money and provide a roof. And if he's doing those things, that he is doing a good job. And any of the kind of touchy-feely stuff is just like, that's mother. So like checking in on your emotional welfare, how you're doing, that's not his job. He wouldn't even consider that. And I wonder, right, that's also how he was brought up. And my father's very similar. Like I can't tell you I don't know if my dad's ever said to me, "How are you feeling?" Like, I don't know if those words have ever left his mouth. And maybe this is. I've always wondered. I'd love to get your opinion, right? I've always wondered that fatherhood has been like this, even in the Western world, even within white cultures and countries. To a degree, there's still that provider, but there's more. I see with the same generation of father, a bit more touchy-feely. And I've always wondered, like, what effects did slavery have on black fatherhood, particularly in Caribbean countries and the Americas as a whole? Like, what is your thoughts on this? Is like, how does slavery impact fatherhood from your perspective and your thoughts?
It's such a good question. It's so interesting. Here in America, there's this constant talk about get over it. Slavery was 400 years ago. That's done. Why do you even talk about it? Look, we're in a post-racial society. It's just stuff like that makes me laugh. And we are affected by slavery, enslavement, actually. We are affected by it every day. It's how we live. It's how we act. It's how we speak. It's how we're perceived. It's how we feel when we step out into the world. Slavery, men, we were nothing but cattle. We were athletes used to pick cotton, to pull whatever. We were there for our strength. We didn't have time to sit there and be with our children. It was very much, if anything, what you have is a lot of kids who have moms who took care of them. So we didn't have the time with the fathers in there. They were out there working, maybe working hard enough to protect their wife and child so that they weren't attacked. So I'm out there working, protect my family. And by protecting them, they lose my presence. And to a degree, we get that now. And for different reasons, we're not around as much, even though there's this perceived Black fathers aren't around. We're around more than any other. At least studies have shown here in the United States, we're here more than any other father in any other race. We're here. But this continuing idea that we as men, we have to provide, we have to protect, and whatever it takes, that we end up being on the superficial side as opposed to the emotional side. I'll do whatever I can to make sure my kids can eat, have a roof, and be protected, and nobody's going to attack my kids. And the more money I make, the more provision I give, all this stuff allows my kids to be safe. But it doesn't allow them to be comforted, to be hugged, to be told that I love them, to be disciplined in a soft manner, to show them what masculinity is. And masculinity isn't just what I can do. Masculinity is my presence. It's the way I hug you. It's the way I love your mom. It's the way I take care of things, the way I hold your hand when we're walking on the street or tell you stories and all this stuff. We lose that. And enslavement had a lot to do with that because it really fundamentally affected the place of the Black man in the family. In a lot of cases, I don't have time to be father. I just have time to be the banker, one who brings the money in, as opposed to the one who brings the money in and then spends it on you in a special way. I just bring you the comfort. And I don't like thinking about that, but we can't avoid it. It's something, enslavement is something that will affect every one of us forever. Our children, our grandchildren, everyone. And the best we can do is slowly, with each generation, try to be a better person, a better father, a better man, so that we can kind of get away from it. We can never entirely avoid the discussion, but we can slowly get away from it and be a better man. And I pride myself on being a father. Like I said, 4 kids, 1 son, 3 daughters. And it's my mission to send out really good people into the world. And I can only do that by being a good parent. So I send my agents out into the world, and the best fathers are the ones who are there and who are fallible when they're there. I am not perfect in any way, but my kids see that I'm fallible. They know that I am aware of it, that I apologize when I mess up, and I allow them to be human and allow them to make mistakes and allow them to see that I can apologize so that they can apologize, so they can recognize life is full of errors that we're going to make. But I'm never going to say I'm perfect. But if I mess up, I'm going to tell my kids, and they're like, all right, if it's okay for dad to say that he messed up, I can too. And that's what I try to do. But just to kind of fall back. But yes, enslavement is in our faces, in our lives, in our minds, in every show we watch, the music we listen to, every walk we take with our family. It's all around. And we're just really trying to do better every day. At least I know what I'm trying to do as a father, is to step away from that and just not be a stereotype as a Black father. I'm just a damn good one who's here.
Yeah, I hear you. And it's like, I really love what you said there about, it comes through in the kind of mentality and the things and choices that Black men are having to make in their lives. This, slavery, enslavement. And I guess I have a slightly different take from my own experience and some experience of my family. Is like, I've always wondered that, it's very common in, someone might refute this, but I've seen it to be very common in Jamaican culture, for instance, for men to have children with lots of different women, like, 3, 4 different women. Mm-hmm. And I've always wondered if that is like, and for a country that has, I think Jamaica has like the most churches per capita of people in the world, or something like that. There's something crazy like that. There's like the most churches per capita. Mm-hmm. And, but you've got all these men with multiple children, with multiple women, who some of them have been married. And I've always wondered whether that is a bit of a hangover from the days of slavery, when, as you said, a Black man, he would just be a piece of cattle. He would be used for his strength and his ability to procreate. And that would be his role. And it's almost like this has carried over into modern times, where it's like, all you're good for is to work hard and also to procreate. And it's almost this acceptance, like, I procreate, but once I've procreated, I have no real responsibility to do anything. That's all I was here to do. And I've always wondered if that is a bit of a kind of hangover from slavery in especially what I've seen in Jamaican culture. But a question I have actually for you, as I was saying this, is like, how do you see that as Black men we are stereotyped, especially around like Black masculinity and how men act sexually as well? Like, what is the kind of stereotype that you see that the lens of the world views Black men in terms of their kind of masculinity and sexuality?
I'm preparing to record, I'm in the midst of recording for season 3 of my podcast. And I've been trying to look at different views of Black masculinity. And one subject that I think encapsulates really how we're seen is I'm looking, and I think I have adult Black male film stars, adult porn stars. If there is anything in this world that encapsulates what Black men are, it's porn. It's this mandingo. Once you go Black, you can't go back. We are here because we are studs out on the field and in the bedroom. We are, that's what it is. Black men are beasts that we will work hard on the field and we will fuck you like nobody else can. That's the idea. So that's what we are. We're not intelligent. We are physical beings, sexual beings. So what I find so interesting when I talk to different men, and I even talked about that with Carla, our mutual friend, and talking about sexuality. For Black men, white women were like the forbidden fruit. In this country, we've died over looking at a woman or a white woman or whistling in her direction or calling her attractive. So this idea that you get with a Black man, that's special. You about to have sex with this man. Very few women know that joy. Very few white women or other races know that joy. So this idea that we're just mandingos, that we're just walking around with 12 inches of all this out there. That's what we're seen as. We're not. We're seen. If you think about it, we're athletes. We're entertainers. We're here to appease you, to make you laugh, for you to enjoy hearing us entertain you or whatever. Sexuality is so an interesting part. I'm sorry, I'm all over the place. But the sexuality, how we're seen, is like, to me, it feels like it's first. I'm here to sexualize you, to tear you apart if you're this white woman. And then I can entertain you as an athlete or entertain you as a singer or a comedian or in everything. And it's just hard enough being a Black man and trying to be taken seriously. But now I got to get past all this stuff first. I'm a sexual being. Yeah. I'm an athlete. I'm a singer. I'm a rapper. I'm all this stuff. I can't be a Fortune 500 CEO. I can't be an attorney or something. It's strange. Or after all these things, before I can even be a professional, then I'm a criminal. Because by my very nature, I'm bad. I'm a bad person, and you are in fear of me just because of who I am. Add all of these things on top of it, and then attempt to be a gay Black man. Okay, so I'm here for sex, to entertain you. I'm not really that smart. And you like men? You're not supposed to like men. You're supposed to have sex with women. So what kind of man are you? All of these things, sexuality just is like, you just stick that in there and it makes even harder, even more difficult to just be a Black man in this world, because sexuality is such a big part. And it feels like it's even more present. And sadly, as racist as this world is, and I don't know how you see this, I don't know, I guess that's something I would ask you, but I don't think there's any community that is more racist towards its people than ours. We are bad. Uh-huh. We are terrible to ourselves. I don't know. I guess I can throw this at you. Is homosexuality an issue in the Jamaican community?
Oh, no, it's huge. It's a huge problem. And I say huge problem, I mean, how it's viewed by Jamaicans. Like, I grew up my mum went to church, right? Spent my days, my early childhood going to church. And she had a gay friend that she worked with. She was a social worker, and there's a guy that she worked with, and he was gay. And she would not let him, she was good friends with him at work, but she would not let him come to the house, right? Because he was gay. And she didn't want him to meet me, right? Like, to this day with my mum, we have to, like, if she says some things that are homophobic, we have to pull her up on it. I've got 3 sisters, so we'll be like, hey, mum, like, you can't say that. Like, this is people's life choices, and it's totally fine. It doesn't make them bad people. So I would say within Jamaican culture that there's a huge problem with acceptance of homosexuals and homosexuality, which is, in my opinion, is really grounded in the Bible.
Oh, yes.
Nothing more than religion in the Bible.
Oh, so true. True.
That rejection, to the point where, you know, in some parts of Jamaica, maybe not so much now, if you go back, 10, 15 years, it really wasn't safe to be a Black Jamaican man and come out as gay in your community. If you were in a rural community, you weren't in a big city, or you weren't, say, for instance, maybe working in the hotel districts with a lot of the tourists. So, like, there's definitely, I would say, within Jamaican communities, this huge problems with homophobia. I
believe same thing with the Haitian community. There's just such this negative aspect or expectation of being gay, and I ask this question when I have men on the podcast, and I ask a few of them if sexuality, if it really needs to be a part of a masculinity question. Does who I love really need to be part of a masculinity question? Does it really affect the kind of man I am if I happen to love men or I happen to love women? I think I wish I had a definitive answer for that, but I know it's a big part. And I know it's something that we carry around. And I have a son, and I don't care who he loves. I'd just be happy that he loves somebody. But I would be aware with how he'd be treated in the world because of who he loves. And that I would have to be aware of. I would know. I'd be like, listen, if this is how you feel, this is you, I support you completely. But no, I will always have extra fear. I have fear of my son driving around now. But now we add on additional fears that I have because of society and how we treat everybody in the gay community. And I would hate for him to have to deal with some things, but being a Black man is hard enough. That just makes it worse. I wish it wasn't part of the masculinity question, but it always will be.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm going to just come back to what you were saying earlier, like this piece around Black men just being seen as, I would say that Black men are the most sexualized men in the world.
By far.
Right? Hands down. I don't think white men are not sexualized, right? Off the bat in the same way. And like you said, we're really just seen as, there's this mythical myth about Black men, Mm-hmm. It's like, they're all they're viewed as being hyper masculine, right? They're viewed as being hypersexual, of being, having massive penises, like all these kind of visions. And it's really interesting because I've done some reading about this before, but this is literally the playbook of what, the Europeans wrote about Black people when they first visited Africa. They were like, they're savages, they're beasts, they're hypersexual, like they're massive and huge in terms of size and muscle mass and all these things. And it's incredible to see that this is like still weaving in and out of society, right? And how we view Black men. And when you start to look at, say, music videos, and we see how, as a culture, we view men as these sexual beasts, these sexual machines. And this stereotype that's kind of pushed on Black men, it's been pushed on me in my life, to say that, like, there's instances where, especially when I was younger, I would date white women, and I'm all like, went to university and did a computer science degree, and I'm reading books about Western philosophy, and I'm traveling around the world. And I remember this was the early days of online dating, and I meet these women, and they had a perception of me, a stereotype of me as being some sort of 50 Cent hood dude, right? And I'm rocking up on the date, and I'm putting my book down and being like, talking about my life, and almost them getting a shock of like, oh, you don't fit into the perception or the stereotype that I was desiring to experience. Mm-hmm. Like, you don't fit the fantasy that I wanted to experience, to have my Black man fantasy fulfilled, and it being a shock to them. Like, and I say it was a pretty present shock over the time, but it was still a surprise because of the way that Black men are often portrayed, whether it's in music videos or movies, across the board, that there's this masculinity of like hypersexuality. But there's also an element I see that, and I say I was guilty for this, of playing into that stereotype, using that stereotype to my advantage. And I wonder what your opinion is. Like, as Black men, do we play into that stereotype because it's so difficult to go against the grain and be like, I want to be a poet, or I am a philosopher, or I write books, I write children's books or something like that? Do we go against the grain because it's so difficult to go against the grain? Or do we go with the, I guess I'm almost asking the same question, or do we go with that because that's just what's there for us, and that's the only way that we find that people almost kind of accept us?
I feel like the question is it easy? What's easier, being you or being who they think you are?
Yes, that's a much better question.
And it feels like, and I think in certain situations, it's easier to just be you. You know what code switching is?
Yes.
Okay. So, as in that, for anybody who doesn't know, when you're Black and you talk to people, sometimes we speak differently based on who we're with. So who we're around. Yeah. So I talk to you and I'm chill, what's good, but whatever. And then maybe somebody else comes along. Hello, sir. How are you? Maybe I'm a little bit more proper. It's easier to just be what they expect. I don't feel like surprising people all the time. I don't need to be like, oh my God, it's a Black man and he's illiterate. He can read, he's read Shakespeare, he knows. I don't have time for that. I'm not here to teach you all this stuff. So if I just be like, yo, what's good? You heard that new big, whatever, and just talk like that and that's what they think, my day goes faster. Like, all right, good, we pound and I go. And it's harder for some people to just, no, that's not me at all. And that's not even Black. That's maybe what you think Black is. That's maybe what you've seen Black to be, but Black is not any one thing. We're not all the same. I've had jobs. I used to work in this movie store, where you could buy videos and before DVDs and stuff came out. And people were calling looking for stuff. One guy came in looking for a movie and he was just talking to me. And I'm like, and he's like, oh, do you have it? I'm like, yeah, I'll hold it for you. He came in and then he came looking for Harvey. And I'm there, and he's like, oh, I spoke to Harvey, and he has a movie that I'm going to pick up. I'm like, hey, how you doing? I'm Harvey. And I don't think it was terror, but it was oh, shit, that was a Black guy on the phone? What? And he was talking to me about The Godfather. What the hell does he know about The Godfather? What? It's a Black man? And he was so confused. And I just, and that was the first time that I'd seen it. I recognized it, but I laughed because I remember thinking, this guy has no clue that he was talking to a Black guy the whole time. And then once it was like, he realized that it was me and that I probably knew more about movies than he did. And it happened to be a Black guy. And even the way he spoke changed. He was proper when he first asked for Harvey, then became different when he was talking to Harvey. It was so different. And I didn't change the way I speak. This is the way I speak. Apparently I sound white. I don't sound white. Mm-hmm. I sound educated. White doesn't mean educated. Black doesn't mean dumb. Yeah. So I think at times it's just easier in terms of maybe speaking to people. But I think, and I'm guilty of this and I can admit it, the college that I went to that I mentioned at the beginning that I failed out of was a teaching school. So as you can imagine, predominantly women, predominantly white women. It was between 2% and 4% Black population at the school. Not Black men, Black.
Wow.
So I could count on my two hands how many Black men I saw there. I'm not going to lie. I enjoyed myself there because I was a novelty to a lot of the ladies there. And so I can sit there and say, yep, they probably were like, oh my God, that's the first Black guy they've experienced. Or I've never taken a Black guy home. Or I would never bring him to the house, but I would, I'd hang out with him at a frat party, or we could mess around and stuff like that. So I'm human. I'm dumb. I was 18, and there was attractive women there who thought that I fit into this particular, subset of men, and I probably didn't say no about it. I'm like, yeah, that's what you think. I'll roll into it. But we definitely, there's some times where it can be to our benefit at the moment, maybe at the time, but not in the long run. Does it benefit us to fit into or kind of fall into these stereotypes? But the really bad ones are the ones that's us just a criminal by sheer existence. That's somebody pulling that purse because they think I'm going to snatch it. Or going to play. And I suck at basketball, by the way. That's another thing. I'm terrible. I can't play, but that's being in gym and they pick teams and I get picked first, but I can't make a shot. It's all these things that we have to deal with. We play into it. But in the real life things, those stereotypes, I know I try my hardest to get away from them, to be able to speak, to be able to have a conversation, to be empathetic to other people and other Black men and such. But there's a little bit of both in all of us, I think.
Yeah. And it's interesting you mentioned the kind of assumed criminality. There's a book by Richard Reeves called Of Boys and Men. Mm-hmm. And in the book, he dedicates a number of chapters actually to Black men and Black boys. And if I remember rightly, this might not be an exact statistic, he was like, it's a white man with similar qualifications to the Black man. If the white man has a criminal record, right, he has the same chance of getting a job as a Black man without a criminal record. And he in the book, he really talks about it. And it's a wonderful book. I highly recommend it to anyone who really cares about men and boys. And he really talks about the fact that there's an assumed criminality that we still hold around Black men. I think his statistics for the United States, this assumed criminality, this assumption that they're in some way that they will do something criminal. They will do something wrong. They will defraud the company. They will steal money. They will, there's this assumption. And in the book, he talks a lot about the labor market in the United States and how it's affecting men. And he actually goes on to say, and I'm pretty sure it's Black men's wages have been the most suppressed wages since the 70s. Like white women's wages, I think have risen the fastest and the highest in that time. Black men's wages have been the slowest. Like their wages are really, I don't know what the percentage is going down. And he puts it to a number of things, but one of the things he attributes this is to this assumed criminality that is there. And obviously we see this kind of assumed criminality in multiple ways, right? We see it, for instance, in law enforcement. Everyone knows, every Black people in the UK maybe follow pretty closely what happens in the US about law enforcement. So we have the same issues here in the UK where, for many years, I remember growing up in the 90s, I was probably in my teens in the 90s and seeing this assumption through TV that Black men are criminal. And it really affects how we then see ourselves as well. And I wonder, like from your experience, your personal experience of talking to men, it's like, how does that affect Black men's lives when they're dealing with a world that maybe not overtly, but covertly assumes that they are bad and wrong and criminal in some way?
It's overt and covert. Sometimes it's right in your face and sometimes it's subliminal. Being a Black man, it affects us in every way. Just driving around, if I have a nice car or not a nice car, just driving around, the fear of the police is a big thing, especially in the United States for Black men, because the police are the ones who enforce racist laws. So I'm surprised when people are shocked at how fearful we are of the police. They were the ones with the hoses, with the dogs and such here, and they were in the right with how they treated us. So now they still under this cover of you're breaking the law and you're just a criminal by your very nature. So I think, and I don't know, I have a lot of friends who are white, they get stopped and they know they're going home. They know that at worst it's a ticket. And if it's maybe a white woman and she's attractive, maybe it's just a warning. And they know they're leaving. They're going to drive out. They're putting the car in drive and they're going to keep moving. It's not the case as a Black man. The police stop you and you don't know if you're going home. Now I'm extra careful. My hands are there. I'm asking. It's like I'm begging for permission to do anything so I don't get shot. It's all these things. So that's one thing. Just being in a society where law enforcement is supposed to protect you, but knowing that they're not going to protect me in particular situations, that I in some way would need protection from them. And there's no guarantee that I'm going to get it. So that's one thing. Then look at it as a father. Now I have a son. Now I have to explain to him what it's like when he drives out. When you drive and you get stopped, shut up. You're not rude. You're not disrespectful. You're not giving them any reason to think you're going to do something because they already think you are. They already think you have a gun in the car. They already think you're going to jump out at them. They already think you're stronger than them. They're already in fear for their lives because you're going 5 miles over the speed limit. That's just you walking out the house. I have to have a conversation about what to do to make sure you get back home to me. What kind of life is that? To live in fear by doing, anybody should be able to break the law and then have to deal with the repercussions. But dealing with breaking the law, repercussions shouldn't be death. And it can be for a lot of us Black men. So how hard is it to live that way? It's hard enough being me as just a Black man, knowing I've got a son who goes to work and maybe he comes back after dark. And I'm nervous that he's not, and something's going on until he pulls into the driveway and puts the key in the door and he's home. How do you deal with that as a Black man? Everybody. Well, what about your daughters? I have a wife and 3 girls. How do I know how they're going to be treated? Being a Black man, you have all the weight of the world on your shoulders, and yet you don't control everything. And a lot of it, you're controlled. Your actions, how you're seen, how you're viewed, how you're perceived, all of it. It's so hard because I don't feel safe anywhere. I don't feel safe for my family. I don't feel like I can go out and get a job just like anybody else. I fill out an application. I do the same thing. If my name even looks a little Black, then something's wrong there. My name is Harvey. That's as non-Black as it gets. So I've been pretty safe with that. But all of these things, being a man and have all of these issues, your safety outside in your world, being safe in your home, being safe in the workplace, and then your family safety is something. And we're supposed to protect everybody. But another thing is that I can't protect everybody. And that's a whole nother thing that I have on my shoulders, that I can't be there for everyone. And then a lot of things that I talk to with men about is that I fear that I can't be there for my wife, my kids, for my family. But nobody's here for me.
Really?
Who do I talk to when something's going on? I spend so much time taking care of everybody else that I don't have that person. And a lot of us don't have that friend, that person to talk to, that person to lean on. So I'm so concerned with the rest of the world, but I myself don't feel protected at all. So I'm not even the best man I can be because I'm not taking care of me. So being a Black man there's so many parts to it. So many things that you'll deal with that you don't even know sometimes. So the way we act, the way we do things is just kind of rooted in our fear of what it's like to walk around in this world. It's I mean, I've clearly thought about this and had this conversation with my son and to the degree my daughters, but it's hard to not let it bring you down. Because I just want to be able to walk around like anybody else. I just want to be. I don't want special treatment. I just want the treatment you've been getting. And you were talking about it, how this, how Black men, even in porn and stuff like that, it occurs to me that there's going to be a bunch of different fetishes and stuff. So Black men or Asian men and whatever. And there's no fetish for white men. That's the standard. And everything works off of that. If you really think about it, white men are the regular people. Then it's Black men or Asian men or tall, short, whatever. Like, we're not the standard. We're like the exception. We're that side. It's so ridiculous when you really sit there and consider where our place in society, no matter where you are. It's crazy.
Yeah. And the thing, because I do a lot of work in the realm of kind of like dating and relationship and intimacy, and it's often spoken about how, and you get this, how do I put this? This is a common rhetoric of like, being a man is easy. Like, men's lives are easy, men have everything. The world's built for men. And I think the thing that is often forgotten in that statement is that, like, the world wasn't built for Black men. The world wasn't built for men of color, and even to a certain degree, can argue that the world wasn't built for the working class man,
Right.
At all. The world was not built, and it can feel like quite a slap in the face sometimes when you hear these statements of like, oh, ladies, I know there's a lot of women that listen to my podcast, and I'm so you're empathetic to men's struggles. It's like, oh, it's easy being a man. You don't have to worry about your safety. You don't have to worry about all these things. And it really forgets the intersectionality of being a black man and having to actually also have this whole load of other things to contend with. This, the stereotypes around sexuality, the stereotypes about our masculinity and how that looks and how that's going to be accepted by others. And those things that weigh black men down. And also the thing you kind of brought in there was like not having anyone to really talk to about the emotional pieces of our experience, like the loneliness that creates. I know men, and I work with a lot of men and have experienced a lot of loneliness. And I believe, from what I've seen of this, it can be worse for black men because we have, within black communities, we have even less of a culture than white communities of expressing emotion amongst men. I think the common view of the black man is a hyper masculine view, as we touched on before, with that sexuality, but also in how we move through the world, emotionless, uncaring. Athletes is a really good example. It's like, the way we view black men is through this kind of lens of the athlete who's almost like a machine, who's just like he just goes through life and kicks the ball and does the thing and throws the hoop and all these sorts of things. And I love to speak to like the loneliness that black men experience because they can't actually bring more of their authentic self, more of their emotional self to the people in their lives because of these stereotypes.
It's hard because I think we're stuck in what we're supposed to be doing. We're stuck in who we're supposed to be. To me, black masculinity is a big term, but it feels like it should be personal to every particular black man. The man that I am is not the man that you are, and vice versa.
No.
So for me, being a black man is a valued part of society, husband, father, all these things. Me, probably fatherhood and being a spouse are top one for me. And that's me, and that's masculinity for me. I don't have a lot of people to talk to about that, but that's kind of, in a way, these conversations I have with black men, like with you, or the men I have my podcast, or men that I coach. Those are the men who I can express. Because one of the reasons that I'm able to do this coaching thing is because I'm as open with these men as they are with me. So we're creating this community so we can talk about stuff. We can talk about how hard it is to be a man and what's expected and how to deal with the fact that maybe I'm not what these people think I'm supposed to be. The fact that I'm not an athlete, that I could be a nerd. I could be a black nerd and love games and would not want to step foot onto a football field or want to play baseball or soccer. We're Caribbean, so we're playing all these sports. I'm none of that. I love football. I'm pretty good. But I'm not the athlete per se. Does that make me less of a man? And how do I feel about that? And be able to talk to other men about that. But masculinity for each man should be something. You are not less of a man because you don't have kids. I consider it a big part of my masculinity, but you're not less of a man because you don't have this. I have a gang of kids. I have 4 of them. But just because you have none doesn't make you less of a man, right? Everybody should be able to be their own black man in their own way and just be as black as anybody else. And that's a whole other thing. How black and masculine are put together, but just being black is a thing also. Am I black enough for the black community? Am I black enough for the woman that I want? Am I black enough for the white people that I'm going to be around? Do I fit what I'm supposed to be? Am I supposed to be a great rapper right off the bat? I should be able to just do something, or I should be able to beat somebody in a race because I'm black. Or black enough for the community, or for some black women who just want that hood. They want that soldier on the street. And I'm not that guy either. I'm very much educated, chill. So then I'm not black enough for the women that I like. And then I'm not black enough for the communities that for white communities and stuff like that. It's difficult just trying to navigate being masculine and then being black and then being black masculine. Like, how do I fit that? How do I, and jumping from hoops because it depends on who I'm talking to that day. Am I Black enough for these women here? Am I Black enough for these white people here? There's so much in it in terms of being Black man. And it's, I don't even, this is not even what you were asking about. And I went into a completely different direction. But honestly, I apologize. I ramble off. I don't want to go. What was the question you wanted to get? I want to try to answer that for you without ignoring it.
I'm trying to bring myself back because I think it's really valuable where we're going, because like, the question was around loneliness, but I'm going to just continue with the thread you're on, because being Black enough is a whole thing that, you know, I've had to, my girlfriend's white and she's Swedish, right? So we had to do a lot of education over the last 4 years. And, you know, you never meet a white guy and he, you know, I've been in a lot of men's groups, mixed men's groups. You never hear a white guy be like, I'm not sure if I'm white enough.
Nope.
Like, no white people worrying about being white enough and being perceived as white enough by anybody. Right? Like, maybe you get the odd person who's like, oh, I grew up around like a lot of people of color. I grew up in the hood, so you know the white people that don't accept me. But it's a very rarity. But it's, you know, every single Black man I've had a conversation with about this being Black enough has experienced this. You know, I experienced as a young boy feeling like I was rejected by Black people because I wasn't Black enough. Because I sounded. I was always said to me, "You sound posh. You sound white." You know, and then feeling like, well, I'm not Black enough. I'm not Black enough for the Black people because, like, I live in a middle class white area and all these things, and it's this thing we have to contend with as men, and then it's the masculinity piece, but we're also Black and masculine, and that has some very particular strong stereotyping that we're being in. You know, no showing of emotions. If you show of emotions, like, you're not just weak, like you're going to be ostracized and kicked out. You know, you need to be tough. You need to be hard. You need to be strong. You need to be a great athlete, right? It's assumed. Everyone's assuming you're going to be able to run, throw a ball, jump over something, outsprint people. You're going to be a highly sexualized lover. Like, you're going to be highly sexualized. These are things that are just instantly put upon you as a Black man. Plus, you got, am I Black enough? Do I do the Black things? Do I talk Black enough to people? Do I look Black enough? Do I wear Black enough people clothes? And it's this kind of constant internal battle that we're having to face and be with. But it's always pulling us away. All of these things are pulling us away from what is our authentic self, the self who we really want to be in the world. As you've mentioned, like that, I need to fit in to this way of being for people to see me as good enough or to accept me. So I guess the question is like, how as Black men do we start to reconnect with our authentic self and then bring that to the world more and more?
I think the first thing is for me, it's self-worth. I need to recognize how important I am. Not even counting anybody else, my wife, my partner, my kids, my family, me as a person, not what I do, not as the parent, as the spouse, as the employee, as the best friend, as anything, but I'm here. And just because I'm here, I'm valuable. And that's usually one of the first things that I talk to men about. I ask them questions to kind of find out where they find themselves. How do they see themselves? I ask men 2 questions on my pod. And one of them is, what do you do to self-soothe? What do you do when life is kicking you in the ass and it's hard and you're struggling to pay these bills and you're going from relationship to relationship because it's not working out and you don't have friends and everything is a struggle? What do you do for you to take care of you? What is your thing? Most men don't have one. Why don't you have something for you? Because I'm supposed to be taking care of them or helping them or raise them or work for them or listen to them. What about you? What are you doing for you? You're important too. This idea that we are at the absolute bottom of our own lists is the first problem. So when I talk to these men, I just tell you, listen, I don't have a problem with your wife, your partner, your family, but I'm not interested in hearing about them right now. So when I do the podcast, They are the center of the of attention. You are the person I'm talking about. It's strictly you. And that can be kind of uncomfortable for men because we typically aren't we're not the top of our list. We're not the topic of a conversation. So you are worthy of discussion. And because of that, you are worthy to take care of yourself. Self-care is incredibly important for men. What do you do? Even if it at some point inconveniences somebody else. I use the example for a husband and a wife, and got a bunch of kids. They're screaming. The wife is unhappy. Maybe she's been home all day with these kids and the father's been at work, and he comes home and he's had a hard week and he's a mess. And wife is having a hard time and the kids are a mess and everything is terrible. And she's glad he's home. And he walks in and he's like, I had the worst week. They overworked me. I thought I was getting this promotion. I didn't get it. This boss has been kicking my ass. All this. I need 2 hours to go do something. And she's like, but I've been here with these kids. I needed some time. And like, I hear you. I get you. I would not be able to help you right now. I am 0%. I am not the man who can help you right now. I need 2 hours. I need you to give me 2 hours. I'm going to go walk, meditate, mini golf, shoot hoops. I'm going to go do something. I need something for me. Give me a few hours. I will come back and then I will be the person that can help you. That is something everyone should be allowed to do. But we men don't ever consider that. We're supposed to pull our masks down before we help anybody else, when the plane's crashing. I can't help you get your mask on unless I have mine on first. I can't help you, wifey, if I don't help me. And you are worth that. As a man, it is valuable. It is important. You are valuable and you deserve that. So self-worth is the first thing. Once you recognize your importance and how valuable you are in this world, 2, life is going to beat you up. You're an important person in this world, but what do you do when the stuff is happening? Who's your friend? That's my second question. Who do you talk to? Who is your friend? We're talking about loneliness. You go and you do something stupid and do you have somebody you could call right now and be like, yo, I did some dumb shit. I know why I did it. And as men, when you got your boy and he'll be like, David, yeah, that was some dumb shit. What you do that for? Whatever. And you talk about it, but you talk about it. And I could talk to you and we're boys and I feel safe enough to lay that at your feet. And I know that you're not going to go run and tell somebody else about it. You're not going to throw it in my face. You understand. You're probably going through it right now. You understand my struggle. So I got to be valuable enough to take care of myself and valuable enough to know that sometimes I need a friend to talk to. I need a vessel. I need somebody to listen. You feel me? You understand? And you'll talk some shit with me, whatever. But then I hang up that phone and I'm good. I let it go. I'm solid. Life is still hard, but I'm not carrying it with me all the time. I was able to drop some of it. So in terms of Black men, our value, we are valuable by our sheer existence, not because of how tall we are, how dark we are, how much money we make, the car we drive, the women we slept with, the kids we fathered. Because you are here, you are important. And because you are here, you deserve to have some mental stability. Talk to somebody, get it out. That's what I would say to any man. You are worthy of taking care of yourself so you can take care of others. Because I think that's in our nature. I'm always going to want to take care of somebody. But when I make sure that I'm one of the people that I take care of, I'm better suited. I'm better prepared to take care of the rest of the people in my world.
It's like, I hear you say there, it's like, having ourselves included in those people that are like important to us. Like our name is also in that list, like it's not our name is on that list instead of it just not being on the list at all. Like all our energy going out to helping out other people. As in like we take care of ourselves, we look after ourselves, we see that like nurturing our own, pleasures, enjoyments, our own self-care, our own self-worth, our own friendships and relationships are valuable in and of itself. Like it's not just about providing financially, or it's not just about looking after others and doing things for other people. It's also really valuable for us to like nurture ourselves, nurture our being, and nurture who we are and who we want to be in the world.
Definitely. When I feel better about me, When I take care of me, I'm so much better for everybody else. When I'm comfortable with me, I want to see that in the people I take care of. And I can do it because in a way I've taken care of myself and I can pass that on to my spouse, to my kids, to my partner. I feel good. I got to go do something. I got to, do something fun for me to just let go some of the stress, to kind of, I can think about myself. I can think about my mistakes and think about my plans and stuff like that. And when I'm more secure, when I'm more comfortable with myself, when I come to you, I'm bringing that same energy. When I'm a better father when I'm comfortable with me, because then I can show you how to be comfortable with yourself. I can be a better spouse. I can show you, I can be emotional. I can be vulnerable with you when you're my partner. When I feel good about me, then I want you to know me because I like me and I want somebody else to like me too. There's so many good parts of taking care of me, of taking care of my mental health, about doing things for me that I can spread it to everybody around me. And I honestly feel like when men are good, this world is good. My home is good, my community, the city, the country. When we're good, we take care of ourselves, we take care of this world, and we're better off. Everybody's better off when men are more comfortable with themselves and more vulnerable.
Yeah. I really feel that. It's, as you said it, there's like the world is better off when men are more comfortable with themselves and their mental health, with their expression, with their authenticity, with their sexuality. Because it's so easy for the world to see men as predators and the problem, actually. It's like they are the problem. Like even this morning, last night, I did an Instagram post about men who are dating who are very fearful, don't take action, and they're not particularly assertive. One of their deep fears is them being seen as some sort of predator. And what I got back was a lot of comments that were not about those men, but about how terrible the men who are predators are. And I was like, yeah, I get that. That's true. I'm not, I acknowledge that fully. But like, do you also see the struggle of the men out there who don't show up like that at all? They're the opposite end of the spectrum. And it's almost like no one really wanted to talk about that. They just want to talk about how bad men were. And I think that as much as, men have done terrible things in the world, I feel I should have a little recording of the caveat, right? Not because it's like untrue in any way, but it's like actually men also have struggles too. And when we don't acknowledge those struggles, we don't support those struggles, we're actually making the world worse for everybody.
Yep. Valid point. You mentioned something before, about people say how hard it is, how easy it is for men. We are victims of violent crimes more than women. We're in jail more. We kill ourselves more. This idea that just walking around just like, yay, just whistling and skipping a happy beat being a man is not the case. There's violent crime is higher against us. And obviously we're the perpetrators, but it's hard to be a guy. And it's not as easy as it might be perceived. And I agree with you entirely. I mean, we've got this culture now where it used to be, I've talked about it, how masculinity has really changed in maybe the 30, 40 years. Before, we're supposed to approach men and, don't take no for an answer and be persistent. And now that, which 30, 40 years ago, be like, oh, he really likes her and he's not going to take no, he's going to keep trying. Now is creepy. Now I'm stalking you if I do what was done 30, 40 years ago. The whole idea of being a man is in how we attempt to approach anybody that we kind of want to have a relationship with. Now we're confused. And there's a lot of men who are confused. But you have women who still want that guy to approach them, buy him a drink, talk to him. But those guys now are like, I've been to the gym and I looked to the right and a woman saw me look and then I was creepy. Or I held the door open for a woman and she gave me this mean look because I was trying to do something nice. Now we don't even know. And it's not this idea of being a man. It's not that it's easy or that it's harder. It's that it's even more confusing. We don't know what it means anymore. And just like every man is different, masculinity is different for every man, what's expected, and I can only speak as a straight, a cis man here, that what women expect from a straight guy I don't know what, when I see a woman I find attractive, does she want me to talk to her? Does she want me to buy her a drink? Does she think if I buy her a drink, I'm going to slip something in it so I can date rape her or something? Does she think I'm going to chase after her in the car? Like, what does it take? Like, I don't know what to do. So it's that. So that's just another layer of what it's like to be a man. And we don't know who we're dealing with and how to be a man to different people. It can be depressing at times if you really think about that. There's somebody I really like and I don't know how to handle it. Just hope for the best and see what happens. And the focus should be on that minuscule amount of men who suck, who do really bad stuff and make the rest of us look bad. But what we do is we just, all men are that. That's just all men. And it's easier to talk that way.
Yeah.
It's easier to just say all men, anything. It saves time. Because if you have to sit there and say, well, the men who do this, that's a deeper conversation. And you have to assume that they're good men in the world, and not everybody wants to do that.
No, I definitely think, and I understand as well, if you've had certain things done to you, you've had certain continual pattern experiences of men, it's easy to believe there's no good men. But I often see, because I work in the space of dating and relationships, it's like you said, there's a sliver of men who are like, they're bad. No, they are not bad. They do bad things. Right. I'll take that back. They do bad things, right? Sometimes consciously, sometimes completely unconsciously. I always stick by that. And they are aggressive. They are overly assertive. They lack empathy and all those sorts of things. But there's men who are on the opposite end of the spectrum who are super sensitive, very empathetic. They are not assertive because they have fear of being viewed as the other men. And they're the sort of men who are like, oh, I don't want to hold the door open anymore, because I read in an article that, a woman was saying how if a man opens the door for her, then he is showing that she's weak and she can't do it for herself. Or if he tries to pay for a first date, then that means that he sees women as still struggling financially. Or if he goes over in a bar to talk to a woman, that he might make her uncomfortable by saying hello, or if he stops a woman in a coffee shop and blah, blah, blah. So there's these men over here who they almost leave no mark in the world, because their fear is to leave any mark on anybody. And yet they almost get forgotten about in their existence, right? Their problems are not, seen so clearly. I guess it's why Robert Glover's book, No More Mr. Nice Guy, was so popular, because it was the unseen man who's just very nice and kind, and almost often what I call like the beige man, who can easily disappear into the background and not be seen. Because the men who are getting all the headlines and causing all the problems of what are the men who are, overtly causing issues. But those men at the other end of the spectrum often get forgotten, and no one wants to really look at them or acknowledge that they have struggles as well, because they're men. And the men's lives should be are supposedly easy every day.
Not the case. It's a good point, because it really just makes us struggle, and we all want somebody. We all want companionship. We all want somebody to be with. But in most of the cases, we're the ones that have to, make that first move, take that first step. And I talk to women about that, and they don't understand how hard it is. And I'm like, you don't understand. For a lot of men, life is about just being told no. If you play baseball and if you get a hit 3 times out of 10, you're successful. But that means 7 times you can get it done. So just imagine a guy sees somebody who thinks he's attractive, and 7 times she's like, no. And in some cases, she's really rude about it. It gets hard to just kind of still go out there, still to try to find somebody, when most of the time we have to deal with failure. Okay, all right, maybe she'll talk to me, but then afterwards it doesn't work out. Or failure. Okay, we're going to go out on a date, but I didn't take her to an expensive enough restaurant. So that's a failure. Or she has kids and blah, blah, blah. And, I don't, and I need to take care of all the kids immediately. I just met you. All these kind of things that get thrown at us. And it's hard enough being a man, but then even that dating area. And you said that you're kind of in that structure. So what's like the morale like for men in this field, trying to find relationships?
Yeah, it's I would say things have really shifted since the advent of online dating apps, particularly the apps, not necessarily online platforms that existed before, like Match and stuff like that. But the apps, once things got into the apps, it started to really shift. And what I think a lot of dating apps, maybe one of their goals was to make it easier, but one of the things that it also did is stop men from having to experience that rejection of like going to a bar and talking to a woman and going into a bar and trying to talk to 10 women and only one of them, answering their hello, right? Which is it can be soul destroying as a man. And it's something that most women have never experienced what it feels like to go into a bar and try and talk to 10 men and those men look at you like you're a fucking piece of shit. Because I've seen that as well. Especially women in their early 20s, they could be particularly cold. And in the same way that boys in their early 20s can sometimes be particularly overly bold. But what's happened with it is because those men aren't experiencing that rejection, they're on dating apps and they're not getting any matches. So what they're experiencing now and feeling now isn't just rejection. They're feeling shame because they don't get rejected like overtly. They're just feeling like no one wants anything to do with them. So there must be something wrong with them. So there's a lot of men who are, feeling completely unwanted in the realm of dating and relationships, because they're not getting in front of people in the way we used to. We used to just land in front of someone because we're in a bar or we're in a work social or we are in some sort of village hall thing and you're in front of somebody and someone gets a vibe from you and they can see that you're sweet and kind and nice. And they're like, I like that feel of his energy being sweet and kind of nice. But now because of dating apps, no one can get that vibe because, everyone's on there thinking that there's an abundance of people to meet and that they can always meet someone better after the next swipe. And it's meaning that a lot of men, and to be honest, women as well, but they experience it slightly differently. A lot of men are just feeling like they just don't want to do any dating. They don't want to be on any apps. They're struggling to meet women. They just are feeling like there's something wrong with them and it's affecting their self-esteem and their self-worth. And obviously you've got a very small number of those men enter into circles like incel circles or red pill circles. But the truth is a very large proportion of men who feel deeply shameful and rejected in dating, they don't go into those worlds online. They just quietly go about their lives feeling very lonely and very undesirable and not kind of being able to improve their social skills so that they could meet a woman. So they just are lonely and they're alone and they're unhappy and they're feeling shameful about who they are and their self-esteem and self-confidence just slowly erodes over time.
I think what's interesting is I think another side has come out with this. So what you get are a lot of lonely men, and that's been articles have been written about that lately. All these men who have no friends and are lonely and such. But to me, there's a difference between lonely and alone. And there are men who are comfortable, who have like, you know what? I'm cool if I'm not with somebody. And I think men like that and to be comfortable to be alone, I think shows there's got to be a lot of self-worth. You have to know. You got to be comfortable with you. That I'm not defined by the trophy wife or the trophy spouse or whoever's standing next to me or the kids that I have. There are a lot of men who are like, you know what? It's too much trouble. I don't want to have to sit there and be rejected over and over again. I don't want to feel like I'm spending money for some woman to possibly like me to give to maybe have a relationship with. I don't need to build a legacy with kids or whatever. I'm entirely comfortable with me. I'm going to work. I'm going to build. I'm going to have my own things. I want to stay home and play video games. I am. And I'm fine with that. And there's nothing wrong with that because I'm not beholden to anyone. I think that's one slight good thing that's come out of this is that we've always been up to moms who raise our boys to be up. You're going to get married, have kids. You're going to protect your family and all that. And maybe that's not what I'm meant to be. Maybe I'm completely content with just being a man, living life, getting to do things that I want, and that I'm not attached to somebody. And being attached isn't a bad thing. I don't say this as somebody who hasn't been married for 15 years with 4 kids. That's me. But it's just I have no problem with a man. No. I have no problem with men who like, you know what, I don't want to date somebody who has kids. Maybe that's not what I want. Men who have set boundaries, who have made decisions for themselves of what they're willing to accept. If I'm going to start a family, I want to be with somebody and I want to start my own. I don't want to have a built-in one come in. I think that's another thing that's kind of come out of the dating thing. There are men who feel like I can't have anybody, but then there's men who also said, I will have somebody, but on these particular terms. which women have been doing for ages. And it's kind of a thing now where men are like, if you can say that you're not going to date me unless I'm 6 foot, I'm going to say, I may not date you if you're over a certain weight or certain things. And we're going to have boundaries which come off as mean when it's a man, but when it's preferences, when it's a woman. I think there's a lot of things that have changed in terms of just men in the dating scene. And I think that's a good part of it. I don't like seeing men feeling like they're not worthy and not good enough for somebody. But if I get some men who are like, you know what, I am good enough. And these women who will approach me, I got to make sure that they're good enough for me. And I think there's a cocky or that's confidence. I have every right to expect something from a potential relationship. I don't want this. I don't want this. If you can't go by that, then that's fine. We're just not meant to be because these are my standards. This is what I want. So I think the interesting thing, we talk about masculinity and the whole dating thing. I think that's interesting to see what change has come about. I've never done the online dating thing, even because that was around long before I met my wife. I don't think that was something else. I'm 49. So to me, the idea would be to talk to a woman and just expect defeat before I really get there. But I'm supposed to go and talk to her. I'm supposed to go say something. Doing it online seems so impersonal. And I don't know if that's something, if me and my wife didn't work out, I don't think I'd be able to go that route. I don't know if it makes me old fashioned. I kind of want to look a woman in the eye. I want her to look at me too. I think I'm of the belief. I've never thought I was like really attractive. I've always thought I'm personality. That's how I win them over. I get them laughing. They're not looking at me like, oh my God. But so I think it's even more important that I need to talk to women. And so I don't know. Is it beneficial? Have you seen really great relationships come out of maybe online dating or Match or whatever these other apps out there? It does work?
Yeah, it does. It does. Some relationships, I know some friends of mine who met their partners online. Some of my old clients have met their partners online. Some of my partner, she's also a coach. They've met clients online. What I would say, and I would, maybe some women would refute this. I think the online space, it benefits women because it allows them to really pick. They get to choose, really. They're really doing the choosing even more.
Right.
And I think there's a phenomenon, and this is more, I've kind of checked into this a little bit. Like there's evidence that says that like the top % of men, the men who are over 6 foot, are in great shape, do have good jobs, are able to show signals that they are wealthy and they have good lives. Those are the men that fared the best on online dating. And those top 10% men are really, far more attractive to the women. And the men who are kind of in the bottom, kind of 60 to 80%, they're the ones that are really struggling and not getting any attention. So, something that I always do with my clients, if they come to me and they want to work on dating and all they've been doing is dating apps, and I get them doing something else. You get them into the real world so that they're meeting women in person, in life. So they have an opportunity to be personal. Like to take it from being impersonal, as you said, which is dating as a very impersonal, it's a photo and a bit of text, to making it personal, because when we're in person and it's personal, we just receive more information from another human being. We can smell them, we can see how they move, we can see the confidence that they stand with, we can see the little kind gestures that they do, we can see the kindness in someone's eyes, we can see the gentleness in someone's eyes, or we can feel more of the intention behind their words. And that, in my opinion, is way, way better way to be meeting people for the purposes of dating than online. Not to say that online doesn't work, it can, but a lot of people are very jaded and they bring in some already stereotypes about men in the online dating space, or they bring stereotypes in of what online dating is. And when you do that in person, you lose that. You drop some of those stereotypes and receive the person in front of you more than you would if it was just across your phone.
Yeah, I feel like the whole, the online dating thing, it just takes away something that's you can't define, like that spark that can come. But just by seeing somebody, we can't really determine how. You can't control who you love, type of thing. And sometimes it's just seeing somebody and there's something there. I can't put my finger on it, but there's something about them that I like. And it's not as easy as seeing an attractive woman, nice body, whatever type like that. But it could be something like you were saying, in the way they speak, their cadence, the way they carry themselves, the way they laugh at a joke or don't laugh at a joke, the way they talk, or, the way they express themselves. To me, it feels like that. I would kind of want that. I would kind of want that experience, to be around the person and see how they are and see how we respond. That there's that spark feels like it should be there, and you can't really. I don't think I could get that spark online. I need to be like around you. I need to be in your circle and maybe see how you respond to people, your friends and family and stuff like that. But I don't have to worry about that. So I'm solid. So I'm good. If it goes haywire, I know where to find you. But for now, I don't expect to have to worry about it.
Oh, well, Harvey, man, I want to, start to wrap up there and just say a huge thank you for this conversation, for how it's weaved in some of these really touching points and really, difficult aspects of Black men and masculinity and sexuality and how the world views us. And you speaking so candidly, so honestly about your experience and your feelings and thoughts on this, and so big thank you. And I'm sure the listeners have been listening to you, and they will listen to more of you. How can people find your podcast? How can people find you to work with?
So, well, thank you for having me. And, I love this conversation, no matter how many, there's a multitude of directions it can go. But thanks for allowing me to just kind of delve and go all over the place. It was a pleasure speaking with you. So the podcast, Men Are The P.R.I.Z.E. You can find that at my website. That is harveylaguerre.com. So HARVEYLAGUERRE.com. That is my website. You can find the 2 seasons so far that I have dropped, and season 3 starts January the 1st. So then I start off with another season, and majority of my guests are men, but I'm working more with women. I'm getting there because there's no way to deny that women are an incredibly important part of our lives. So to lock them out of the conversation, probably not the best thing to do. So this season I start with a woman. I find a Black woman therapist, and we have a good conversation about what we need to do as men to find our right therapist and talk about our issues. My podcast, like I said, P.R.I.Z.E. If you haven't seen it before, in a nutshell, P represents purpose, R represents resilience, Z represents zeal, E expectation. I ask my guests, these men, these questions: what is your purpose? What has happened to you? What made you the resilient man you are today? Zeal, what do you do? What do you have that you love that is just for you? Something you are zealous about for you and only you. And finally, expectation. What do you expect to be? Where do you expect to be in the next 5 years? Are you where you thought you would be when you were a kid? These are just the words that start the conversation. And like I mentioned, the podcast is a space to start a conversation about anything, as long as a man is talking in it. That's the point of the podcast. And we have some good, deep, introspective conversations, and we talk about whatever. And it's just fun. Because when you get 2 men talking, when you get a man to open up and talk, we can't help but spill. And when you get comfortable, it's just coming out, because we're so not used to doing it, that when you're in a space where we're talking, and I went through that too, and blah, blah, blah. And it's good to hear men just let go, because we're better when that happens, when we just let go. So harveylaguerre.com. And in case you were interested, like I mentioned at the beginning, I also have a podcast with my wife, Love is Black. So that loveisblackpodcast.com. We talk about relationships, a Black man and a Black woman. It's a space for Black love to be shown in a positive light, because it's not always seen that way. It's always some toxic thing, some abusive guy, some crazy Black woman or something. We've been married. We're going to be 15 years, and we talk about stuff, and we have deep, and we talk about everything. And we do it with respect. We do it with love. And this last season that we're in the middle of season 5, and we're writing a Black love story together. So every week, each one of us writes a chapter, and we're all kind of my wife is playing a character and I'm playing a character, and we're just writing a chapter about this love story. Black love is a beautiful thing, whether it's loving yourself or loving the person you're in the relationship with. So feel free to check me out. In terms of social media, I'm just Men Are The P.R.I.Z.E. You'll find me in pretty much every social media aspect, or sometimes just put Harvey Laguerre in, you'll get me. In terms of coaching, Inspire The P.R.I.Z.E. is my website for my coaching. If you want to talk, if you want to feel comfortable about yourself, about your struggles, and you're not sure what's kind of holding you back and you don't know what, I'm here. We'll schedule a chat and we'll talk. And then if you're really ready to get into it, because the only way it works, and we're men, we can handle some tough love. We can handle some conversations. I can get at you. Why did you do this? I can talk to you about things. If you're ready for that, inspiretheprize.com, my website. Schedule something and we'll talk. And I think I don't guarantee results, but I guarantee that you will communicate and you will feel better about yourself. And when you feel better about yourself, everything else works because you're willing to put that effort, because you know you're worth it. So that's where you can find me. Can I end with one thing, if you don't mind terribly?
Go for it.
All right. I end every episode of P.R.I.Z.E. with this because I'm talking to men. And it's not something that we hear a lot. And I wanted to end this with you. And thank you, David, for having me. I just want to say to every man out there, as we record, we're in the holiday season. We have a lot of men who were husbands and fathers who kind of find themselves by themselves now. Maybe their marriage ended and now their kids aren't there. And I'm in the United States, and we have Thanksgiving, big family get together, and then we go buy the tree, and then it's Christmas shopping and all this stuff. There's a lot of men who lost that for whatever reason. So now they're by themselves. No kids, no family, may not have had a lot of friends. So a lot of these men, a lot of you may just be sitting here and all you have are your thoughts. And this is when, oh my God, was I a good husband? Oh my God, am I a good father? Oh my God, am I a good employee? Why didn't I get that promotion? These are the things that happen to men and lead us to potentially making bad decisions. I know because I tried and I said I still have that mark on my wrist and I didn't do it. What I want to say to every man is that there's somebody right now whose day is okay, but is going to be really good because you walked in. Their day is going to get better because you called them, because you guys had the 2-minute conversation. You joked, you laughed, you made fun of each other, you did whatever, you had a little jibber jabber. You are important to somebody and you may not even know it. You make somebody's day, life better. So if you are in a space where you're not feeling your best, understand your value, that somebody else loves you, that somebody else needs you, that somebody else is waiting for your time, your presence, your voice. They're waiting to hear you slam that car door and walk into the room because you're just about to make their day and make them feel better about things. You are amazing. And if nobody tells you that today, I'm telling you. And I don't know you, but I know that you're worth it, that you are special, that you are fantastic, that you are a man and you're the prize. Thanks for having me, David. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Harvey. That was beautiful, man. Thank you very much. Thank you. Listeners, thank you for being here. Thank you for just being part of this conversation. It's a wonderful conversation. And if you got something from this, then I'd love you to, maybe go put a review up on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or wherever you listen to your podcast, or share it with a man that needs to hear this conversation. Because often we hear good conversations or good podcasts, and what's really needed is for another man we know in our lives to hear that same conversation so that you can talk about something that maybe you never talked about before. But until next week, thank you guys. Ciao, ciao.
I want to say a big thank you for listening. It's people like yourself that really help get the podcast out into the world. Especially if you're often sharing the episodes and the podcast with people that you feel just could do with listening, right? Can see a different way of being a man, maybe a different way of having dating lives and intimacy and relationships. So I want to say a big thank you. And if maybe after listening to this episode, you think, oh, there's someone actually who could really do with this, please share it with them. Share the love. I'm really, really grateful. And if you want to get in contact with me for any questions, or you want to talk about coaching or any working together, feel free to reach out to me on Instagram @theauthenticman_, or you can email me hello@theauthenticman.net. Thank you very much.